Whether on the field, on the court, or on the balance beam, there's more to winning than the final score. Hi, I'm Patrick Manning of Black Desert Resort. We recognize the effort it takes to succeed. That's why we are proud to partner with Utah Checkdown, the podcast that tells you the story before the game, then gives you a recap of what happened when it's all over, the grit, the glory, and the disappointments. Join us for stories of Utah's finest athletes and coaches. Thanks for listening.
You're listening to the Utah Checkdown podcast. And now your host, Josh Furlong.
Welcome back to another edition of the Utah Checkdown podcast. I am Josh Furlong, happy to be back with you again today. We've got more football to talk about, a little bit of basketball to talk about as well. It's a busy day, so let's jump right into it. But first, let me tell you about our partners, Black Desert. Black Desert Resort isn't just your home, it's an endless retreat where life is played your way, from intimate studios to spacious four-bedroom suites. The raw beauty of southern Utah is your new backyard. Discover its championship golf course, exquisite dining, and world-class outdoor adventures, all yours to conquer. This is luxury your way. Learn more about owning a luxury residence at blackdesertresort.com. Come play, come stay. Alrighty then, so let's jump right into this. First off, I've mentioned this a few times, but I just want to keep plugging it here. I have started a Blue Sky account. This is a social media platform for those that may not know. No, I'm not leaving Twitter. I will still give you all the information there on Twitter. But for those that have transitioned over to Blue Sky, there's enough Utah fans there that I want to make sure that I'm available there, presenting the information there. So you can follow me. My handle has changed just slightly, but is now jfur, so jfur.ksl.com. Kind of a cool little thing at Blue Sky. You can use your own domain. So that's jfur. That's the username. So if you're there, come give me a follow. Hit me up and we can chat or whatever. Happy to kind of answer any questions that you may have about anything. As best as I know, I'll try to answer it. So you can follow me there too. Once again, this is not a political thing. I'm not leaving Twitter because of, XYZ. I'm just giving people that are on Blue Sky an option, and I want to make sure that the information is out there. If that's my job is to give the information to the fans as best as possible. So I am there as well. So let's start things off today. Today, you can wish Kyle Whittingham a happy birthday. It is his birthday. He is 65 years old. So it's not something that he likes to talk about much. He very much so does not want to be in the spotlight with birthdays or anything that way. This is that magic number that he's always talked about as kind of, at least early on, he talked about he didn't want to coach past 65. So that becomes a big question as to, his tenure and where he's at. He's coached for 20 seasons at Utah as the head coach, obviously more than that as an assistant and all that other stuff. So, but this is kind of that time. And I asked him this week about it. I didn't expect to get, an answer like, yep, I'm hanging it up after this year, or no, I'm continuing. He's never, he's I don't want to say calculated, but he is calculated, but he's not going to give it out at a press conference like that. So I did ask him, so I want to play that audio for you just to kind of hear what he says, and we can kind of discuss.
Kyle, beginning of the season, you talked about how you approach your coaching tenure as a day-by-day.
Uh-huh.
Are you still at that spot, or kind of where are you at, depending on your future?
Yeah, I'll evaluate after the season. I believe, those type of decisions and that type of mulling over and thinking about things of that nature are after the season. When you're in season, you're in a completely different mode. You don't have a lot of perspective in season. And so those type of decisions are made after the season ends, when you have a little bit of time to decompress, weigh things out, and decide ultimately what's best.
I don't think we were expecting anything different from that, but I think that's a great answer. He's going to weigh his options after the season. I don't think anybody expected him to really just make a rash decision. Oh, well, this season is terrible, so I'm going to stay. Or this season's terrible, I'm going to go. He really wants to give himself perspective. He obviously wants to spend time with his family while he still can. That's not like he's imminent and dying or anything like that. But you obviously want to spend time with your grandchildren, and his grandchildren mean the world to him. And he wants to be able to be there for them. And so that time is obviously sooner than later, and that may be this year. But he's going to evaluate that, kind of get the season's perspective, get the whole perspective. Obviously, he's having more talks about his future, right? I don't think this is any surprise to anybody. I think if he does walk away, that's not coming as a surprise. I know there's a subset of the fan base that would love to see him kind of leave, and not because they don't like him, but just because they want to see a difference, in coaching and different stuff that way. But it's obviously going to be on Kyle's terms. He's not getting pressure from anybody. Obviously, he's trying to give more of the workload to Morgan Scally. Not that he turns it over to him, in a season's role, but he's trying to acclimate him to become the head coach, right? Like, he is the head coach in waiting, but for years he's been acclimating him to that position where, he'll share some responsibilities or do things that are behind the scenes that maybe are reserved for a head coach that are going to Scally. And this transition becomes much smoother that way when you know who your guy is, right? And Morgan Scally has a ton of respect in that room. Everybody loves him. He respects everybody. He wants to make sure that that everybody's taken care of. He wants to bring a different style to Utah to some extent, but this is very much so kind of a continuation of the culture when that time comes. There will be changes in how things are operated and stuff that way, just as you would expect. So it's not going to be all the same as what Kyle operates. But this is that transitionary period is close, and it doesn't. We're not entirely sure if it'll happen now. I don't even know if Kyle honestly knows. I know, like I said, he's had those conversations and he's been talking more about his future outside of football. But it's real easy for him to come back and say, let's give it another round and let's keep it going. I would be surprised if he continues much longer, but you never really know. So that's that extent. If you see Kyle, go wish him a happy birthday. I can't imagine many of you are on a name-to-name basis with Kyle where you're doing that, but he'll probably run away from you if that's the case. He doesn't like talking about his birthday. So moving on, this Saturday is senior night. Obviously, there's a game that it's important, and we'll get into that as we discuss kind of a breakdown of Iowa State, ranked number 22 in the country. But this is senior night, and as I mentioned on Monday, there's going to be a large body of people that are graduating or being represented. Kyle estimated somewhere around 25. I think that number is still kind of in flux. I think right about now it's probably getting closer. I wouldn't be surprised as I'm doing this podcast, we get a tweet that shows who's walking. We talked to Keanu Tenavasa. He's not a senior, but he has the opportunity that he could leave if he wants. He's still kind of weighing his options. He was still unsure if he'd even consider walking, trying to decide those things. He really absolutely wants to see his NFL grade and kind of see where they project him before he makes a real decision. So whether he walks or not is still kind of up in the air. At least it was earlier this week, officially, right? So, but as part of the senior night, senior nights are always special for all these players, right? They've meant a lot to the fans, to the program, to everybody, and it's an opportunity. It's a small little ceremony, obviously, to kind of celebrate them and what they've done for the university. But this year is a little bit different, and it's different in the sense that Ty Jordan and Aaron Lowe, who would have been seniors this year, will be honored as part of this. And obviously there has been a lot of honoring and celebrating these two individuals who have passed. But this becomes kind of it adds more emotion to the day just simply because of who these guys are and what they meant to the program. And so I got a chance to ask Junior Tafuna and Sharice Shaw some questions about that, and kind of, I want you to hear their emotions, because this isn't just, two people, right? This isn't just some people that you casually don't think about. These people meant a lot to the team, and you'll hear it in their voice and kind of how they approach it. But I think it kind of really portrays, who these individuals are for the team and kind of how it goes. And anybody that's followed the team obviously understands that, but I want you to kind of get an insight look on kind of how they approach it. So this first one is Junior and kind of talking about him, and then we'll go with Sharif.
The team's honoring Aaron and Ty as part of that. What does that mean to you just to be able to have them being honored in that same time?
Man, I'm grateful and I'm humbled, and just because I'm still living and breathing, and they're my class. All of us. After this year, no one's gonna know who they are, and so just love them. Grateful for them.
Aaron Lowe is obviously somebody that was a big part of your life when he was here. You guys get to honor him and Ty. For you personally, what does that mean?
You try to bring a tear to my eye right now. There's not one season, one spring that I don't see and spend time with his mother, that I don't call her. When you are able to recruit a kid, go into their home, sit with them, make promises to their parents, and tell them that I'm going to take care of your kid. And in the same moment, you're the one calling mom saying that your baby has passed away. He will mean so much to me for the rest of my life. He is with me through so much. Two of his pictures are in my office. And I talk to him like he's there. I'm like, Aaron, you're struggling, baby. I sure would need your smile. He's just smiling at me. I said, okay, that's a sign that I need to quit crying and get up. So you're touched by some folks in your life. Some people bring such a level of joy and commitment to you that you never know what they were brought in your life for. You just don't know. But that one, Aaron in particular, I thank God for him. I thank God for him. And I appreciate him every time we're able to recognize him and so many other youths that have passed away in the middle of the third to the fourth quarter. I love that celebration. I do. It's a temporary pause from whatever may be happening in that game that I can just reflect on what matters the most. And it's certainly not a football game. So.
It's a interesting perspective from these two, right? Obviously, these guys mean a ton to them, as expected. I don't think anybody is expecting that, but you can hear the emotions in kind of how they answer that. Obviously, with Junior Tafuna kind of choking up. Sharif did a little bit as well. It was interesting because there's some people kind of listening around as media's doing this, and there's a lot of people crying as Sharif is explaining this, and so I think the emotions of what this means to these players and these coaches is real, right? It's not manufactured. This means something to them. And this is going to be an emotional day for the players. Like Sharif said, I can't, too many S's. Like Sharif said, this is about perspective, right? It's a football game at the end of the year, or at the end of the day. It's not. There's more important things in life, and these guys are doing everything that they possibly can to compete and doing everything they possibly can to be the very best that they can. But at the end of the day, it's just a game, and so this is where it's different for how this game is played, right? Like Utah very well will probably lose this game on Saturday. Maybe not, right? I mean, I think there are opportunities there, but this is a tough team. But at the end of the day, it's more about recognizing all of these people that have put in the hard work, and they're doing their job to be able to continue, right? There's, I want to give you something from Sharif in a little bit that kind of furthers this, but this is where it shows your character in life, right? It'd be easy for a lot of players to just say, you know what, we're on a 6-game losing streak. I'm done, and can't. And there's some people that do that, but that's the same with life, right? Like you either quit a job or you quit something that's hard. And I think this is what shows the character of these players. And this is what Kyle Whittingham, when he looks back on it, the wins and losses are important, right? Like, don't get me wrong, getting to the Rose Bowl or winning the Sugar Bowl or the Fiesta Bowl or different things like that, those are going to be top moments in his life. And those are going to be something that he remembers forever, right? But at the end of the day, if you talk to these coaches especially, the things that matter the most to them is about seeing these guys and their character, right? Is seeing how they deal with adversity and seeing how they overcome this stuff. And obviously the winning makes it so much better, but you're seeing kind of how they develop as human beings. Most of the time you're getting these kids, sometimes 17, you're getting them mostly at 18, some at other ages because of the transfer portal and other stuff. But it's watching the maturation of these players, and not just in their sport, but also in kind of who they are as individuals. And so let me play Sharif's clip where he talks about this, where, it would be real easy for this team to kind of fold and just say, we're done. You're not going to forfeit, but you're not really going to put in as much effort. Especially on the defensive side, you're seeing them put in a ton of effort. I'm not saying the offense isn't. They're trying. They're just not able to produce as well. But you're seeing it, right? That defense, especially on Saturday, they played as if they still had a championship on the line. And I think that's what matters the most to them, is watching their character and watching who these people are. And I'll give you Sharif's clip on that, because I think he just has a way with words, honestly. I mean, he is eloquent. He's fun to talk to because he just gives you everything that you need to hear. And whether you've been coached by him or not, like you almost feel like you want to run through a wall for him, right? Because he just gives you that motivating attribute that just really jumps off wherever you're at. And so I'll play that and we can discuss it further.
Sharif, how do you continue with this season? I mean, I know it's been a tough season, but what's kind of your message as a whole as you try to motivate guys to kind of stay involved?
Seasons like this we're not immune to them. Nobody is. And when you go through this, you recognize that the connection that you have with kids is what pulls you out of it. It's what continues to have a ball player come into your office, into your particular room and says, "Coach, why are you smiling?" "Why would I be sad?" "Baby, I don't have time to be sad about this. I can't change anything that happened in that game. Let's get better, and let's see if we could at least get a little bit better so it doesn't continue to happen." "Well, Coach, it keeps happening." "And what? So we're going to quit?" "Because we won't." So it's the connection that you give the kid, because this is really a microcosm of what life is. "Well, I've done right all the time. Why do bad things continue to happen to me?" "And so you're going to quit?" "No, get up and keep fighting and keep fighting and keep fighting." So it's the perpetual optimism that you infuse in a kid, because if you have a genuine connection, they feel it. They feel it notwithstanding anything that's going on, they feel it. If you really care for them, they feel it. And if it's really more than football, they will feel it. If what we teach is truly genuine, they will feel it. It transcends everything we're dealing with. So hard times come, hard times pass, tough people are here forever. So it's just what makes us. And this is a program. And you revel and you sit in the connection. You just sit in the connection with the kids. And you learn a lot of yourself. You learn from these kids. And it's fantastic, notwithstanding the pain that we're going through. I learn a lot about who I am. Adversity reveals a lot of your character. And I like to see who I am in different shades. I like to see who the kids that I recruited, who they become when we're really hurting. And you're amazed that these babies are a lot more genuine, sincere, and loving than you ever thought that they would be. And you learn that in these moments.
You gotta love that, right? Like you have to see what you're made of in these moments, right? And I think that's exactly what you're seeing from a lot of these players this year. It's really easy to feel good about yourself when you're 10-0 and everything is going well, and you're en route to a Big 12 championship and the playoffs, and everything's going well that way, right? I mean, it's easy to feel good about yourself and work harder and do those things because it feels like it matters on the field, right? The reality is life is more like what this season is for Utah. There's a lot of ups and downs, and look, I'm not going to get philosophical here, right? Like, that's not my job. But I think that's the nature of this, right? It's easy to be able to have these moments where, you have the tough moments, and you have to figure out how to answer those. I guarantee you, I as a kid, I remember thinking like, oh man, I can't wait to be an adult. It's going to be so much easier for X, Y, Z. And then you become an adult, and you want to be a kid again because it was just so much easier. It was so much, freedom, and you felt like you could do what you want. But the reality is like you can't escape life's adversity, right? And I think this season has taught us more than anything. It's easy to sit here and say, as I've mentioned before, this is entertainment, right? And you as an individual, where you're going through your own adversity of life, you want to come in and turn on the TV, or you want to go into Rice-Eccles Stadium, or if you're traveling with the team, you want to be able to see there and just have that moment where you relax, right? Where you can just kind of, erase the noise that's going on around you and just celebrate with your fellow peers in your favorite team. That's the tough thing for you as a fan, but it's even tougher for these guys, right? They're the ones that have to live it. At the end of the day, you can go home and you're gonna sleep poorly, or you're gonna be frustrated, and you say, if this wouldn't have happened or that wouldn't have happened. These are the guys that are having to deal with it on a day-to-day basis, right? Yes, it is entertainment, but at the same time, this means something to them. It's about life lessons. One of my favorite things about having my children personally into sports is it teaches them life lessons, and it teaches them how to deal with stuff. My kids especially, they're big into baseball, and they've picked a sport where you fail more than you succeed. Absolutely. This is not a sport where, people are celebrating you a ton just simply because you strike out a ton. There's different things where the game just goes against you. And so it's a great life lesson to teach you that not everything, goes your way. And you're going to be on teams that lose. You're going to be in a game where you have a slump. Things are going to happen. But at the end of the day, it's about how you come together as a team and about how you work and kind of persevere. That's exactly where this team is at, right? There's no question that this team is still capable of being a championship contending team, right? This wasn't, the media and the fans, none of us were hoodwinked by this, in the sense that, like, they put out this team that looked like it was going to be good and then it wasn't. The framework is still there. The talent is still there. The problem is, it kind of snowballed when Cam went down, and everything kind of changed from there, right? We've gone over that. But the reality is these guys are persevering. They're trying. They're trying to get a bowl game as much as they can. And it's easy for me to sit here and say, nobody wants a bowl game. It doesn't even matter anyway. So many people will opt out. That's not the point. If you've worked so hard for something, and your goals have to change, I guarantee you there's many of you listening to this that there's no way every single one of you have obtained every single one of the goals that you have in life. I would be very surprised. And if you are that, minority that does that, kudos to you, because that's phenomenal. But I think goals change, right? Goalposts change. You can have your visions on something, and sometimes just getting to the finish line is all that matters. That's kind of where this Utah team is at, right? As much as, a bowl opportunity is probably not in the cards, this is still a team that is fighting for it. They're doing their best to be able to do it, and they want to be able to obtain that. And if you get a win this week, then you're fighting even harder next week to get that, because you want to do it. You want to respect the seniors. You want to respect the process, so to speak. I know those become kind of cliche phrases, but they mean something to these people, right? They mean something to them, where you and I can, turn off the game or go away, or, I can finish writing my story and then kind of go home and do what I need to. This is life for them. And it's a short time, and, they're going to continue to fight through it and persevere. And you got exactly from Sharif Shah and kind of what he's looking for from these guys. He can still have a smile after losing 6 straight. And I guarantee you he still does. Kyle Whittingham comes in every Monday and he still makes a joke, right? It would be real easy for him to get even grumpier every week and say, you know what, don't talk to me, and just be really, really down. And there are people that do that. But you have to kind of pick yourself up and kind of focus, because if you bring that negative energy in, it's just going to translate to the rest of your team. It's going to translate to everything, and it's just not going to work, right? You have to erase those things. You have to get over it. At the end of the day, you wake up and it's a new day, right? And you can choose to do it. Like I said, I wasn't trying to get all philosophical here and trying to get all this stuff in, but I think that's an important lesson as part of this sports, right? It is entertainment, but there's so much value to sports. And that's why I will always say, that sports matters in life. People want to sit here and say that, you could do away with sports and it doesn't really impact anything in life. And I would argue that that's completely wrong. Sports means something because it is a microcosm of life. And it helps us kind of cope, maybe that's the right word, with what's going on. It helps us to be able to develop friendships and build bonds and work together. Everybody needs a support system, whether that's in sports, whether that's in life. Maybe you have a religion that you rely on. Those types of things all are important. And I think you see that in life. So I don't want to dwell on that too much. Obviously, we have other things to talk about. And before we kind of jump into scouting Iowa State a little bit, kind of want to jump into the basketball side of things, because there was kind of a big news that happened this week. We were at the media was at the football facility, waiting to talk to Kyle Whittingham and the players on Tuesday night, as we always do. And as we're sitting there, there was the staff was waiting to see our reaction because they were going to tweet that Lynne Roberts had accepted a head coaching position for the LA Sparks. This is in the WNBA. Lynne Roberts, obviously the women's basketball coach, if you're not familiar. She accepted that head coaching position. And I know that becomes kind of a weird thing. She's only coached 4 games this season. And I know some people are like, this is weird timing. Why would she do it right now? The reality is the WNBA works on a very different schedule than most other sports. A lot of people kind of follow it in like a school system, right? You start in the fall, kind of go through the spring, and then the summer period. There's not a lot. I mean, soccer's going on in the summer, but for the most part, there's not really much happening in there outside of some other sports, right? Olympics or whatever that may be. The WNBA, however, is kind of flipped that, right? So once the NBA season ends, the WNBA season essentially begins. And so for some of these athletes in college, when they get drafted, it's usually in April. They get drafted in April, and then they're immediately playing like 2 weeks later in the season. It becomes a very difficult challenge for a lot of these athletes. Like Alyssa Peely last year, she got drafted and then suddenly was on a team and trying to acclimate. That rookie season for women athletes is very tough. To try to make that transition, because you really didn't get a break. And so it becomes a challenge. For coaching, obviously, like the season is over for them. And so now you've got to kind of build your product out, right? She went to the LA Sparks. It's her hometown area. She wanted to coach her team. I mean, this is a phenomenal opportunity for her. And as much as she wanted to be at Utah and never really had a desire to leave, this was an opportunity too good to pass up. And so she had to, not had to, but she decided to take it. And now she gets the responsibility of kind of filling out, not the roster because it's pretty much full, but they are going to have the number 2 overall pick in the upcoming WNBA draft. So you've got some things to build on. You've got some things to work on and kind of get acclimated into before the season starts. That's just the nature of the business. And it's unfortunate for Utah because Lynne was a phenomenal hire, right? Once she got it clicking, everything started to go in great order. Like, she finally got her recruiting class that hit. It was Gianna Neepkins, Jenna Johnson, Kennedy McQueen, and then she's continued to build from that. And now you can see kind of how she's developed this, where she's now just had some of her best recruiting class that she's ever had. She gets L.A. Snead, who is the highest recruit she's ever had that's in this upcoming class for next year. You've got a team that absolutely can compete for a deep run in the NCAA tournament. This is, she's set it up extremely well. But more importantly, she's created a system around her. Maybe you could say similar to kind of how Kyle Whittingham has done it, of building up a culture and the coaching staff that is kind of in unison. And so Gavin Peterson, who has been her right-hand man, he's been the associate head coach. He takes over, not on an interim basis. He's actually been named the head coach. So he takes over. He'll have an intro press conference tomorrow. He is the right person for the job. From all the interactions that I've had from him, he follows the system very well. He's going to be different to an extent, right? But the players love him. They respect him. The coaching staff loves him. This is going to be a great move for them. You just have to hope that he can continue that I don't want to call it legacy, but the trajectory, there you go, of what Lynne Roberts had developed, because she was really on an upward climb. He's a great recruiter. He helped bring in a lot of these athletes that have committed. There's other ones out there that, Utah's in the mix for, and he's been a part of that, as well as a lot of his coaching staff. But this is this is going to be interesting to see. We get a real-time look at how he's going to perform immediately, because he will take over, starting on Friday when they have their first game with him as the head coach. So really curious to see how it goes. I don't think it's going to be too different. The players are all the same. They still have the same operation. He is well-versed in it. He's been with the University of Utah for 10 seasons. He's been Lynne's associate head coach, I believe, for 6 or 7 seasons. I can't remember exactly. But it's a well-oiled machine right now, and things are going well, excuse me. So, this will mean change for Utah, obviously, and it's going to be a tough challenge because Lynne was the perfect figurehead for this role, right? She was a great coach, but more importantly, she knew how to kind of get support. She knew how to build the program, and the success that you're seeing from the women's basketball team right now is largely because of her, because she's done everything she can to bring attention there, right? When people weren't talking about a women's basketball team, especially on a season where they only won 6 games, she was still fighting to get people to come talk about it. She was still fighting to get people to come into the stadium, wanting to get season tickets and wanting to get people in those doors, because she understands the importance of women's sports, right? Gavin understands it as well, but as a woman, she understands it more than anybody. She wants to see this grow, and you're seeing an explosion of women's athletics, especially in basketball lately, volleyball and softball and all these other things. It's growing, but basketball has a big hand in it. And you can say Caitlin Clark is part of that. And yes, 100% she is. She has transformed the game of basketball for women's athletics tremendously, right? But it's other people like a Lynne Roberts who have done it in their own individual sphere, and you need to continue to grow that. Gavin, by all means, he's going to be that same person, right? He's going to continue to push. I'm curious to see how he develops that and how vocal he becomes and kind of what his philosophies are and how this team is approached. But the coaching style and everything, it's very similar. You're not getting a huge drop-off, but I'm curious to kind of see how it goes. So, they do play at home on Friday. It's a doubleheader with the men. The men play first, I believe, starting at 3:30, and then they have the late game. So you'll get two games if you decide to go to that. But this is a team that's worth watching. Both of these programs, I think there's a lot of optimism around the women, obviously, with what they've done the last few years. But I think with the men as well, with their connection, kind of what they're able to do, there's a lot of optimism about what these two teams can be. And so, the women are on a different plane right now just because they've had more consistency and everything's been going on. But I think the men's team as well, you've got a lot going in its favor, and they're fun to watch. They have a lot of shooters. They love the 3 points, and they've shown that they can do more if they can't hit the 3-pointers, but that's still a big part of the game. But it should be a fun season for both of these teams, and we'll talk about them more as the season develops and obviously as football transitions out. So let's finish with Iowa State, kind of scouting them. For anybody that's been following along, Iowa State has a great season. They started off the season 8-0 and have ended up dropping their last, or not. They haven't dropped their last 2 games, but they did drop 2 games and they won last week. But this is a team that it's well balanced. They've got a great offense. They've got a great defense. There's not a lot of problems with this team. And it's going to be a tall task to be able to beat them. So the last time these two teams met was obviously as a non-conference game, but it was back in October 9th, 2010. If you remember right, that was the Jordan win going off and just absolutely obliterating this team. They beat them 68-27 in Ames, Iowa. So it was quite the coming out party, so to speak, for Jordan Wynn, and everything was going well for them at that time. Completely different circumstances right now, right? This meeting, it's going to be a 5:30 kick, and it'll be on Fox, so you get the big show. But you're going to get a fun environment. Obviously, senior night, as I've mentioned, it's going to be a tall challenge for Utah. But the crazy thing about Iowa State, this is always my favorite stat about Iowa State, is that in their history, they have never had a 10-win season, ever. Like, they've gotten to 9 wins several times, but for whatever reason, that 10th win eludes them a ton. And so if Utah can get a win this Saturday, they absolutely play spoiler again to that. So if Iowa State wins this week, there's a high likelihood that they can get 10 wins. I think their schedule lays up well, obviously with one more game that they can do it. But it would be interesting to kind of see them play spoiler to this. I feel like the last 3 weeks, Utah's been in that spoiler role to some extent, obviously with BYU and an undefeated season at the time. And then Colorado, as they've become one of kind of the top teams in the Big 12 in their path to the Big 12 championship. Utah could have spoiled that opportunity. But now you have a chance to spoil Iowa State, not just for the 10-win season, but they're still in the mix for a Big 12 title. If BYU loses or Colorado loses, this absolutely opens up the door for Iowa State to get in there. So this is going to be a tall task for Utah because Iowa State's got a lot riding on this game, especially against a tough defense. Iowa State's going to be prepared to go into this for battle, and so it's going to be a fun game. We'll see that. So let's jump into kind of what this team is. So kind of looking at some of their stats, just general stats. This is a team that is pretty decent on the offensive side of the ball. There's nothing like splashing off the page of like, oh, they are so dynamic in this one area, right? They're pretty balanced. Their passing offense is far better than their run defense, run offense, excuse me. But that's not to say that it's bad. They're just more of a very balanced team. They're one of the better teams in scoring, right? They get 31.4 points a game. They've been able to put up some points. They're passing about 267 yards per game. That's, they're fifth in the Big 12, so that's behind teams that Utah's played at least. TCU, Colorado, Oklahoma State. So they can put up some points. They can throw the ball around a ton. It's still not kind of like Colorado. Colorado was clearly much more pass heavy. And but this is a team that can do it kind of a similar way. They've got some dynamic receivers, and I'll talk about them in a sec, but they can do well, right? Total offense, they rank 34th, so they're a good team. They rank 4th in the Big 12. It's a team that they can move the ball, and they've got some assets that can do it. Obviously, they have to go against Utah's defense, which is one of the harder ones that they've had to play this year. However, they have played Iowa. They've also played Houston, and Houston's defense has been pretty solid. They're one of the best in the Big 12. So, they've been able to do it. They got wins against both of those opponents, Houston and Iowa. So, they've been able to fight against tough defenses. But I'm curious to see how this works. So, this is also a team that doesn't allow a ton of sacks. They've allowed 14 sacks this season, not a lot. So, they protect Rocco Becht, who's their quarterback, and keep him upright. Third down conversion. This is where things kind of change with this team. So they've got all of the opportunities available to them where they've got a great offense and they can do what they need to. But this is a team that hasn't been as efficient. They've been efficient, but they haven't been as efficient in, third down conversions, fourth down conversions. Excuse me. I'm looking at their defense. Excuse me. On offense, they've actually been decent. So third down conversion, they're 48th in the country. They convert on about 43% of the time. So, that one's not as good. Fourth down, though, they convert as the third best team in the country at 80%. So this is a team that, yes, if you can get them into third down situations, you have a chance. You can stop them pretty well. But if they get into those fourth and short, and sometimes fourth and long, they'll take their opportunities. But fourth and short especially, they've done a phenomenal job of being able to get there. 80% conversion on fourth downs is pretty crazy. So that's a tall task for them. But kind of conversely on that, Utah ranks first in the country on third down conversions allowed, right? So Utah ranks at 24.1%. This is what is so funny to me, because you still have a subset of the fan base that kind of still gets frustrated that they call it the third and scally, and think that Utah isn't too good on third downs. Utah has been phenomenal on third downs this year. First in the country. That's literally what they've been. 24.1%. You're converting one of every four third down opportunities. That absolutely gives you an opportunity to win games. If you can do that with this defense, this gives you an opportunity. You've got to keep them obviously in third and long situations, and you've got to keep them outside of your ends, your territory on the field, because that's when people in the analytics start saying that you should go for it on fourth down. But Utah has done a great job of being able to stop them on third down, or not Iowa State, but stop teams on third down. And, that means a ton for how Utah's going to do this. Conversely, though, if Utah gets down into fourth down, this is where the challenge becomes. As I mentioned, Iowa State is ranked third in the country at 80%. Utah is 80th at 57.1%. So you're going to see a team in Iowa State that looks at that, right? You're going to see that they see that Utah has been not as good at fourth down, so you're going to take that chance. You saw that with Colorado last week where they took a few opportunities on fourth down. I don't know if they're looking at the analytics that way, and that's their reasons for doing it, especially in fourth and long situations. But when you're not as good on fourth down, it's an extra down, right? Like I understand, like I sympathize, I'll say, with teams that don't want to punt, because if you can get another down to be able to try to get a first down, I mean, you obviously extend the drive. Like you can go into those philosophies and do whatever you want and how that works. But I think when you look at this Utah team, third down is where they make their money. After that, fourth down, they relax a little bit. Things haven't been as good. I haven't broke it down completely on when these are, fourth and short or fourth and long to kind of see what the disparity is that way. But regardless, in the general fourth down conversions, Utah hasn't been as good. They've allowed more than half of those, and so we'll see kind of how that game plan turns out. Then moving into the red zone, this offense has been pretty efficient. They're 25th in the country. More importantly, though, they've scored on 90.5, so 90.5 of all of their trips into the red zone. That's wild. Like, they're one of the best teams in the country at being able to do that. And it's not just all field goals, right? 64% has been touchdowns. That's an impressive feat. So this offense, if they get into the red zone, they very likely are going to score. And yes, they'll get some field goals, and Utah's done a phenomenal job of holding teams to field goals. Utah ranks 33rd in the country, limiting teams to 78.3%, 47.8% as touchdowns. So when Utah gets teams into the red zone, by and large, they have held them to field goals mostly. But you still don't want to give them the opportunity. Obviously, anytime you get into the red zone, that becomes dangerous territory, and the chance of scoring is just so much higher, whether it be field goals or touchdowns. So this is an offense, as I mentioned, that is pretty good, right? Like, they're a well-oiled machine. They're balanced. They have exactly what they need to be able to be effective, and they can move the ball. Now, defensively, this is also a team that has been pretty solid. And by solid, I mean, like, they've been one of the best in the country. Scoring defense, they ranked 18th in the country. They only allow 18.6 points. Passing defense, they're third in the country, allowing only 153.4 yards. That becomes a huge challenge for this Utah team, right? They're third in the country, and they've got some phenomenal secondary players that do well. This is obviously they're leading in the Big 12 with this. The real wrinkle here where Utah has an opportunity, if they can get it, which actually happens to be Utah's least effective position lately, is the run defense. 107th in the country for Iowa State. They're giving up 184.5 yards. That's 15th in the Big 12. So, I mean, they just haven't been good in their run defense. The problem is, outside of, games early in the season, Utah's run offense hasn't been great. That was one of the reasons why Utah couldn't get anything going against Colorado, is because they just didn't have a good run game. There was other factors, right? Like, I'm not going to pin it all on that, and I talked about that on Monday. But this is a team that, if they can get it going, you've got the opportunity there for you, right? Like, they've shown weaknesses there where they haven't been nearly as good. I mean, 107th is not great, right? Like, there's 4 teams in the country in FBS. That's not great. But if you pass it, that's third in the country. Like, this becomes a real challenge, right? So now Utah has to kind of figure out how to get an area of weakness into a strength suddenly, which is wild to even consider that Utah is weak in the run game. But that's neither here nor there. There's obviously a lot of factors that go into that. But that becomes kind of the game plan for Utah, right? Like, you have to be able to attack that. You have to be able to be efficient in the run game. And if you can be efficient in the run game, that's going to help you tremendously in trying to open up the passing game, where you've got to make it more comfortable for Isaac, where he can take his shots. But at the same time, you're going up against guys that are honestly some of the best in the country on the other side of the ball. And so you've got to be really disciplined. You've got to be able to get it down. And it's really easy for Utah's offense that has obviously not done well at moving the ball, just suddenly go into 3-and-outs every single series. You know, if Utah can get first downs and they can do it in a way where they're running the ball effectively, I think that absolutely opens up this game where Utah can win. That alone, I think, is where Utah has a chance. If Mekhi Bernard can have some success, you can get other guys in there like Mike Mitchell. He started getting in there. Dijon Stanley, which hasn't really been in the mix lately. If you can get these guys, being creative, coming off the edge or whatever it may be, I feel like Utah has a good chance in this game. But that becomes the challenge, right? This is I don't know. This is where it becomes difficult. Utah really has to figure out who it can be this week. Obviously, you have Isaac Wilson coming back as a starter again. He is not sick this week. We talked to him on Monday. He sounded pretty healthy. He seemed pretty good. But you now have a full week of game plan where in theory he should be able to be healthy, and so things should be good. Conversely, what I was talking about earlier when I was saying the 3rd and 4th downs on Iowa State's defense, they're actually not great in 3rd and 4th downs, and that's where they end up losing the games. It's only been 2 games, right? So it's not like it's been this huge thing. But this has been something where teams have been able to move the ball, and I'm going to, make an estimation here without fully digging too deep. The teams that have been able to be effective have run the ball on 3rd and 4th downs. It's not really rocket science, right? I mean, that's usually what happens. But they've been able to convert at a much better rate there. So, for example, 3rd down defense, Iowa State is 79th in the country. They're allowing teams 40.4%. If you remember, Utah's defense is 24.1%. So that's a significant increase, right? Teams are getting almost half, not quite there. They're almost getting, 3rd downs almost all the time. 4th down, though, they're 90th. So as bad as Utah's been on 4th downs, Iowa State's been even worse. They're allowing 58.3% of 4th downs, and so you've got opportunities here for both teams, right? They're both kind of licking their chops on 4th downs because you feel like you've got a good chance. 3rd downs, Utah has a better chance to pick up a 3rd down than I would say Iowa State does, simply based on these defenses, but it's tough. Red zone defense. Iowa State, for as good as they are on offense in terms of being able to score a ton, on defense they're allowing a ton of scoring as well. So they're 81st in the country, allowing 85.7% of all red zone trips from opposing teams to score, and 66.7 of those have been touchdowns. So teams, if you can get in the red zone, there are chances here. Once again, I haven't dug deep into this, but I'm going to estimate that it's going to be that run game that's been the best opportunity for these teams, that when they get in the red zone, if you can run the ball effectively against, or just in general, you have a good shot against this Iowa State team. This is tough, where if you pass the ball, especially in a red zone where it's shortened, you're almost guaranteed not to be able to be successful. But if you can find a strong run game, this becomes Utah's path to winning. But you have to be able to get those touchdowns, right? You have to be able to get into the red zone, and you have to be able to score. And a lot of that's going to come down to the run game. So let's look at some of these players, because this is a really intriguing roster. And I don't feel like Iowa State gets the respect that it deserves based on kind of what they've been able to do. Rocco Becht has been a great quarterback, but he's not the flashy quarterback that people are going to be talking about. If anything, nobody's talking about Rocco Becht, right? And he's put up an efficient year. He's thrown for 2,600 yards, 2,600 yards, 62.5% completion rate. He's had 17 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. So he's turnover prone to some extent, but not too bad. And he's been best in play action and not in screen situations, but he's efficient in all of it. So he's been able to do whatever he needs to. They don't use a lot of screen passes. He works the middle of the field a ton. This is a guy similar to kind of how Jake Retzlaff did it, where the middle of the field is where he loves to go. right? If you get him on the, on the outside or anything, it's not his favorite. He actually doesn't do as well in that in terms of his grades and his passing. But you get him in the middle of the field, that's where he makes his money. Honestly, his best grade comes on deep passes up the middle. He's got a 91.9 grade from PFF, just in general in deep passes. But in the center, he's 95. That's his grade. Like that's phenomenal. Like 12% of his passes come in this area. That's a huge opportunity for Iowa State to move the ball. And if Utah can't defend that, this becomes really a really tough challenge, right? These are those chunk plays that coaches like to talk about, where if you can get 15, 20 yards on a pass, that absolutely devastates teams, because you've got these defenses that are working so hard, and suddenly now, one little pass erased everything. You saw that with Shadir Sanders last week, where Utah worked so hard on, first or second or even third down in some respects to be able to get him, and they would contain him and everything would be great. And you got QB hits or whatever it may be. And then all it took was one down and he's throwing it 25 yards downfield, and Travis Hunter catches the ball and it changes the entire tone of that, right? It's so hard to compete against teams like that can make those chunk plays. And Rocco Becht is absolutely capable of doing that. In the middle of the field, whether it's long or short or anything, like, he's been really effective there. Now, the crazy thing with Becht, though, is he's actually better in the deeper passes. So anything, we'll call it 10 to 20 yards plus, whatever it may be, that's where he makes his best passes. And like I said, it's in the middle of the field. In the medium range, so 10 to 19 yards, in the center of the field, he's a 91.6 grade. So not a huge drop-off there. That's 25% of his passes is in the middle area of the field. So about 10 to 19 yards, he's going to work there. That other 12%, so you're looking at 37% of his passes are over 10 yards. He's going to be effective, right? And so this puts a challenge on Utah's corners to be able to contend with that. And they've shown that they've been able to do it, but they've still got to be more disciplined. They've still got to be able to be on top of their guys, or else they're going to burn them, and Utah's going to be paying early. The crazy thing is that in the short passes, anything within 10 yards, 9 yards, whatever it may be, Becht hasn't been as efficient. Honestly, his grade is only a 55.4. This is 43% of his passes, and with it being the bulk of his passes, it's easier to have more grades against you. And so, take that with a grain of salt. But just know that this is a quarterback that he can work efficiently in the chunk yardage, and he will do it, and he's effective at it. So you got to respect him. He can run the ball. I think if I remember right, he only has like 210 yards rushing. So it's not a ton. He can run it. He'll try to scramble out for touchdowns or whatever that may be. But for the most part, he works in the pocket. He's going to stay there, and as long as Utah can contain him, they can get to him, but they also don't allow a lot of sacks. And so an efficient offensive line that does exactly what they need to, and he's efficient with the ball and getting it downfield, especially in those chunk play scenarios, like I said. So the real thing on offense for this team, though, is their two-headed wide receiver monster, and it's Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins. These two have been phenomenal this season. Noel has 935 yards and 5 touchdowns. He's averaging about 16.7 yards per catch. He is their leading receiver. He has the second best grade in PFF. The only one that has a better grade than him is his counterpart, and that's Jaden Higgins, who has 860 yards, 7 touchdowns, and he's averaging about 12.6, 12.7 as the team's second leading rusher. He has an 89 grade on offense. And so these two have absolutely been the offense for Iowa State. Beyond that, it's a huge drop-off to their next receiver, and that's a tight end in Benjamin Brahmer, who has 179 yards. So the bulk of this offense, especially the passing offense, is going to come down to these two players. And if you can mix and match them well, this is Zamaya Vaughn and Cam Calhoun, if they can contend with them well, this helps Utah a ton. This allows them to be able to work, right? Because there's other players that can contribute, but it has been these two. And they're going to make you pay. Like I said, some of those deep passes, that's going to be Jalen Noel. Some of those middle route passes, Jaden Higgins, most likely. These are guys that are going to be able to do their work. Now, they're both capable of all of that stuff, right? But These two you absolutely have to respect. If I remember right, Jalen Noel was on a ballot that I had for the Blitknoff winner. He's absolutely in contention for that. He's doing a phenomenal job and absolutely worthy of being a semifinalist for the Blitknoff and everything there. So tough test there to be able to contend with that. But Utah's faced teams like this before, right? And I think Utah, when they do play in that man coverage, not get into that soft zone or any of the zone coverage, they usually do better in these scenarios. They're not having to worry about anybody else in that regard. You've got these two. That's not to say other players can't beat you, but if you can go toe-to-toe with these two, you're probably in a good spot. Now, their run game, it's been efficient, right? It's been efficient, but it hasn't been kind of the staple of this offense. Last year, Abu Sama, the third, he kind of exploded a little bit late in the scene. If I remember right, he had one of his best games against BYU. He's their second leading rusher with 449 yards, 2 touchdowns. Their leading rusher right now is Carson Hansen. He's a sophomore at 503 yards and 9 touchdowns. But all of these guys, you have a third guy, Jalen Jackson. He's a senior. He has 341 yards and 2 touchdowns. All of them are averaging about 5 yards per carry. That's exactly what you need. That makes it efficient. So even though it hasn't been the staple of this offense, it's still an efficient one, right? And if Utah can contend with them, they're fine, but they're going to have to play on a lot of those wide receivers that I talked about, those two, Higgins and Noel that are going to be the challenge. But they have an efficient run game where you have to, respect both of it. And so, like I said, a balanced offense. Their passing offense is far better, but it's still balanced in the sense that you can be effective in both regards. Now, where this team, honestly, I don't want to say makes its money because the offense has been great, but I think where this team really shines is in the defensive secondary. This has been a phenomenal unit. Darian Porter, he's a corner. Jontez Williams, he's also a corner. These two, they have high grades. Porter has an 83.6 grade. Williams has an 81.9 grade, and it's been great for them. Porter, honestly, he's got an NFL rating of 5, or NFL pass rating of 5. Teams just don't succeed against him. So, tough challenge. These guys are going to be effective. They're going to do their job. But that's essentially it. If you can get past them, you're going to be okay. And we'll see what happens, but it should be a tall task for Utah, and we'll see kind of how it goes. But we'll sign off today and call it a day. We'll come back again Monday and chat about all things Utah football and continue on with that. So for another week, we will have fun. We'll see what happens. So have a good week.